So you've seen all these cool aesthetic videos on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the hybrid athletes looking pretty pretty jacked, pretty in decent shape, but still being able to run, being able to perform, but also lifting considerably heavy, right? Not necessarily the same as like an elite level powerlifter or running the same as a elite level marathon runner, but being able to achieve both to a relatively good level. You're like, how? I thought you couldn't do this. I thought you could only be just a master of one. You can't be a jack of all trades while still looking like that. But obviously, this being blown up a lot more on social media, like, yeah, no, this is something I want to be part of. This is something I want to do for myself because I know I can do it. I can push myself, and this is essentially part of the message that this style of training, this kind of community pushes as well. Just being the best version of yourself, and that's generally why I love it. I love it so much because, one, I love training in general. I love pushing myself. I love challenging myself in multiple areas. I don't like just being a specialist in one. Also, it kind of gets boring just being training for one particular area, and I just want to be able to move well, lift well, look pretty good as well, right? As a consequence of this, you end up doing a lot of training. You're probably training a lot, or trying to train a lot, because obviously there's so many different pieces of the puzzle that you need to try and progress in, right? You're trying to progress in strength. You're trying to make sure that you're in decent shape. You're looking good physique-wise as well, while still improving your endurance. And you're like, okay, this is the template that I've seen online that people do. I'm gonna do this. I have to train this many times throughout the week. I'm gonna try and do it. Then you end up doing it, and you just feel you might be able to do it. You may have done it a few times, maybe for a week or two, and then you get to a point where you just feel super fatigued and wrecked, and maybe you have a few niggles and injuries and stuff like that as well, because you just literally went from doing what you used to do and essentially ramping it up to working as hard as you can, because you're already working pretty damn hard in your other training sessions, right? But you're doing the same thing with a completely new modality of training. You're essentially getting another type of training and adding the same drive and work ethic towards that training on top of what you're already doing. So you're essentially working double time. And you think that this is a good thing. It is a really, really good thing. But ask yourself, does this make sense for longevity purposes? Is this potentially why you're feeling all these niggles and aches? Is this potentially why you feel exhausted all the time? You know, obviously you've got other areas in your life, right? Maybe you're not able to show up as much for those other areas in your life. You're just obviously dedicated to training. You love training. I love training. This was majority of the time and effort that I really want to put towards training. Like I care about it. However, there are still other areas in my life that I massively prioritize and give a shit about as well. And what's important to me is being able to show up in all of these different areas that I care about. Likely, you are the same as well. However, because you're such a hard worker, which is generally, like I said, a really, really good thing, you just grind out your sessions. You really, really push hard each and every session that you do. Even if you don't feel like doing it, you just show up. Then you may put it on your Instagram story, or you tell yourself, yeah, these are the days that it matters the most. Well done. Honestly, like, that is a really, really good mindset to have. That's very, very useful. Asterisk until it's not. Until you actually get to a point where maybe 3-4 weeks down the line passes and you're just stuck in that same position. You're still super fatigued. Maybe you're even more exhausted. Maybe you've even regressed from the plateau that you were stuck with before. And you're just like, what? I'm working super, super hard. Why am I not making progress? So you end up doing the thing where, what do you think is better to do? You think that doing more is better. So you end up doing more of the thing that was already driving you into the ground, right? You just assume that more work equals more progress. You were doing more before, and that's how you progressed. So honestly, it makes sense to just do more, right? But this is actually the thing that's holding you back. I'm not just saying this is the things that I've learned, right? Obviously, the title of this episode is Avoid These Mistakes so you can achieve your dream hybrid performance. And these are the things that I've gone over myself. These are the lessons that I've learned, the trial and error experiences that I've had, and a lot of the things that I see that are done wrong with hybrid training, right? There are multiple different things that you are trying to progress in, and it's honestly the same method of trying to just go 100% in the previous training that you were doing and 100% in essentially another edition of training. This is the thing that's going to keep you in this stuck position, and that's what I'm going to go through during this whole episode, right? I'm going to go through the things that you actually need to do in order to make progress, and it's probably going to be something that you're not used to, but hopefully you'll see where I'm coming from, and hopefully you'll be able to implement this, and you'll also see when you do start implementing this that you actually start making progress again, okay? When you first started doing this, or even when you're doing it now, you're probably just trying to, push as hard as you can, 100% into your sessions, whether it's lifting, or whether it's running, whether it's the sport that you're doing. Literally every single session that you're doing, you're probably doing a damn lot of sessions, right? Because hybrid training kind of requires that. That'll be for another episode where I go into how to actually hybrid train with less time. But for now, you're probably training a lot, and you're probably putting 100, maybe even 110%, even though you don't want to. You're that type of person. You're that type of person who just really, really wants to push themselves and prove themselves. You essentially walk around with a chip on your shoulder, sort of thing, right? Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is essentially the kind of headspace and mindset that I have with my training when I kind of have to dig deep. You just really, really want to push yourself and prove to yourself that you can do this thing and push past this bit that's where you want to stop. But you're not going to, because you're just that type of person. So you end up doing the thing where you max out every session, regardless of whether it makes sense for the current state that you're in. Whether that you fuel properly or not. Maybe you're one of those individuals that, you have to get a training session in super, super early. You're not hungry though, so this is what it probably looks like. You wake up early enough so you can get a session in for maybe 1 to 2 hours. 2 hours kind of pushing it, but yeah, you wake up super, super early, you go to your training session, and then you have to zip off to work, whether it's like working from home or going to a place that you actually need to go to work for. Yeah. But in between that time, you don't eat, so you end up training fasted. And maybe you don't have time to have a post meal after your training session, so you end up not eating until your lunchtime. You've trained on an empty stomach, trained without refueling yourself, and your first session is potentially 4 or 5 hours after your really, really hard, intense session that you did. You're probably, no, I'm going to say it, you're underfueling. This is a massive thing that I see a lot of people do, especially who do hybrid training, because like I said, there's a lot of training sessions that you need to do, and the timings of everything within everything else in your life that's going on probably doesn't allow you to have a meal before or have a meal after, so you don't prioritize it. You tell yourself that, this works for you, this works for you because you just don't know any better. You end up training fasted, you unknowingly underfuel, and when you do eat, you just focus on protein. Literally, you're like, if I were to ask you, how was your nutrition? You'd probably say, oh, it's okay, I try and eat healthy, eat whole foods, etc., and I try and get my protein in. That's it. Eat healthy. Put this in the YouTube video under quotation marks. You eat healthy, but you probably barely eat at all, right? For the amount of training that you do as well. You're very, very active, yet the energy that you are consuming does not match the energy that you are outputting, okay? And you're probably just completely oblivious or ignorant to the fact that fuel comes from food. You've probably seen that food is fuel, but you've never really taken it into consideration that food genuinely is the fuel that you need in order to perform better and recover better, right? There's two different big rocks for recovery, and because of the training that you do, you need to recover a lot. The amount of training that you do accumulates a lot of fatigue, and all that fatigue requires some recovery. Not some recovery, a lot of recovery. Okay? You also probably take on not into consideration. You've just heard that carbs are bad. You've just heard that. You never actually looked into it. Right? It's still a weird prevailing concept that carbs are bad for you. And when you have carbs, you probably think, oh, I don't want to have too many because you're going to end up feeling slumped and sluggish after you have that meal. It's because of the way that you're eating. You don't eat in the first meal that you have. You don't have as many carbs, which makes sense because you don't want to spike up your insulin and get that crash. So you just focus on the protein, right? But because of the nature of hybrid training, where it incorporates endurance work for lifting as well, it's equally as important for lifting, but you're doing even more work, which requires even more food. As a consequence of that, requires more carbohydrates because that's your body. Generally, your body from a physiological level. I don't understand that. I don't know how else to say and state the fact that from an objective point of view, carbohydrates are needed for your fueling. Obviously, if you've got other health conditions that may affect your ability to take in carbohydrates, but this is for the individual who doesn't have this issue, okay? Carbohydrates are your body's preferred source of fuel. Use that and take that into consideration appropriately so you can fuel better, okay? Don't end up doing the thing that a lot of people do, a lot of what I did back in the day as well, just underfueling because, it works for me. Literally. With your training program as well, it's either random, right? You end up just doing as many days of training that you can, try and get into the gym. If you have a structured training program, you probably just follow one that you've seen online. There's no real structured progression. Fair enough, you can kind of wing it and it works at the start, but then, like I said, you're stuck now, right? You're stuck, exhausted, feeling a bit niggly everywhere. Maybe you're just copying what these influencers put on social media, if there is structure, like I said. Another thing that's common that I did as well is just getting your previous program where, it's focusing on putting on muscle tissue, getting stronger, and then you find a running program and then you just slap them together. You get 100% of what you were doing before, 100% of the new program that you're doing, and then you slap them together, essentially making 200% worth of a program. Let that sink in, and hopefully you realize that that's potentially why you feel super, super exhausted, right? You can't just get 100% of another program and slap it with 100% of another one and put it together and expect to be able to consistently hit that in a sustainable manner. And then in addition with the workouts that you probably see online, they do double sessions, right? This is the influencers that you see, the cool, super cool freaking social media accounts that you see doing this style of training, hybrid training. You probably see that they train double sessions 6 times a week. Minimum 12 sessions a week amongst everything else that you're doing. So you're like, okay, cool, I can't do all of these, so I'm gonna just do as much as I can with my schedule, amongst everything else that I'm doing. Under fueling as well, right? One, this is probably the thing that they do for work, so that's why they're able to train so often. They've also got sponsorships. They've also got other things that allow them to fuel themselves and recover themselves. And like I said, this is basically their job. So they have to do this. One, they have to do this. Two, they're able to recover from it, potentially, I don't know, but probably because of all the sponsorships that they have, right? Like their context of their life does not match yours. So it doesn't make sense. Again, hopefully that shows you it doesn't make sense to copy exactly what they're doing. And ultimately, like I said before, you just don't recover enough. The two biggest rocks for recovery is eating enough, which you probably, like I've said already, you aren't doing. And then two, sleeping. But another one actually is taking into consideration your overall training program. This is a very, very easily modifiable area where you can already improve your level of recovery. There's a sweet spot essentially with your training program where you're able to, put in as much effort and volume towards the things that you want to improve on, so you can keep progressing in those areas. But this doesn't mean doing as much as you can. Within your context, it probably means doing as little as you can, because even then, that will probably require you to put a lot of time towards training anyway, right? Hybrid training, as a consequence of the nature of it, trying to improve in multiple areas, likely you're going to be training quite a bit. So trying to do as little as you can in a way where you're still able to move the needle forward is going to allow you to recover better. Again, on top of that, like I said, one of the other big rocks is fueling properly, and then the other one is actually sleeping and resting and not training. Progress requires recovery. Training in this way accumulates a lot of fatigue. The accumulation of fatigue requires a lot of recovery, and that will allow you to create those adaptations that you want. Okay? So, if you feel like you just need to do more, you need to lift more, you need to run more, you need to push harder every time you go into a training session because you ain't a bitch and you can do it, cool, I get it. But apply that when appropriate. Okay? And the last thing that I've put in here as well, ice baths aren't the only recovery method. That's like the small rocks, okay? The big rocks, food, recovery, and sleep. Biggest rocks there is that you need to take into consideration. The other one, even before the ice baths and the supplements and the massage guns, etc., looking into your program as a whole, all right? So look into those before going into an ice bath, like training 12 times a week and hoping that an ice bath helps you make progress. It's probably not the way to go about hybrid training. If you are able to, take into consideration all of these different things that I've just mentioned, genuinely, this is what it could look like for you. You're actually strong. You feel that you are fitter. You can endure more. You feel a lot more robust as well. You're obviously still sore from all the training that you do, but not to the degree of just trying to lift your body up everywhere, sort of thing. Where you're kind of like, when you come off of a chair and you're like, you kind of grunt. Maybe that'll be part of it. Probably not. Like I said, you'll probably feel slightly sore, but not to the degree that you're experiencing now. And your lifts, your endurance, and your performance, all moving forward. You can feel it as well. You're like, shit, I feel super strong. Shit, I feel super fit. I can run fast and this is easier. Oh shit, my performance in the sport that I'm doing feels a lot better as well. I don't feel so heavy and just like, being held back by this amount of fatigue that I have. I feel recovered. Generally, dialing in all these things that I mentioned before will help you achieve that. This is how I've helped the one-to-one clients that I've worked with, the one-to-one athletes that I've worked with, and like I said, the lessons that I've learned to apply in order to achieve this particular thing for myself too. You also know how to navigate every session to constantly move forward, right? come to a training session, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in your sport, whether it's a run, you know, okay, I have this for my training session. This is how I'm going to execute it in a way that will move the needle forward. If I feel sluggish, I'm not going to just push through that. I'm actually going to approach it in a way where, okay, maybe I can't push as hard, and that's okay. This is how my body is actually, this is a way that my body is telling me that I can't push as hard because I need to recover a bit more. So you know exactly how to navigate those sessions in a way that takes into consideration the amount of recovery that you've had, the limits that you can push, in order to continuously make progress rather than being stuck, exhausted, niggly and achy and injured, and potentially regressing all the time, right? So, like I said, the things that you need to do are these things here. Actually training with the program, like I said, the training program is one of the most modifiable things that you can do. You need to do as little as you can in a way that elicits the most amount of progress within all the different areas that you want to keep progressing in. You need to train with a structured program, with a program that is designed to keep you making progress instead of just going into the session. You kind of have like a structure and you're just going to go RPE, 10 out of 10 effort, you know, because beast mode and I ain't a bitch and you need to push yourself because you can do these hard things. No, it doesn't work like that. We're not robots, we're not just inputs and outputs. You need to provide yourself with enough recovery, and like I said, that's easily implementable within the training program itself because that can already take that into consideration. Okay, we need to have this balance. Like I said, learning how to push forward and pull back. When you turn up to a training session, you know, okay, I'm feeling really good, I can probably push a bit more, or I feel okay, I'm going to stick to whatever is on my training program, or I'm going to pull back because what's actually prescribed on the training program or what I have on my training program doesn't feel like the necessary amount of effort that I'm supposed to be putting in, and if I push more than this, I'm probably going to feel even worse, and this is going to leak into the other areas of my training because I have loads of other training sessions to do, and I don't want this to happen on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, and then weekly basis, and again having that cycle of pushing super hard up to a point where you quote unquote burn out, and then you get stuck there and you just get annoyed and frustrated with the lack of progress that you're making. Additionally, stop overlooking your nutrition, please. Don't just focus on protein. Protein is not the magic bullet. It's obviously very important for recovery, so yeah, take that into consideration with your recovery, but the other components is total caloric intake, right? The total amount of calories, the total amount of energy, because calories is essentially energy, the total amount of energy that you're consuming for the amount of energy that you are outputting. With hybrid training, there's a lot of energy that you're putting out, so we need to meet that with an appropriate amount of energy that you are consuming from the drinks and the foods that you have, and then the next layer on top of that is focusing on the proteins, the carbs, and the fats that consist of those calories. All right, like I said, don't just focus on protein, take into consideration the amount of carbohydrates that you're taking as well. Okay, I'm gonna hopefully this puts it into perspective for you as well. You only have 168 hours within a week, right? Outside of your training, assuming, let's say, you know, you get 10 to 12 hours worth of training, look at the amount of hours you still have left outside of that training. You have so many hours, and all those should be geared towards maximizing your performance when you go back into your training session and maximizing your recovery so you can keep moving the needle forward in terms of making the adaptations that you want. And the adaptations are the things that you're trying to progress in. And please, just stop with the ice baths. The ice baths and the saunas, like, that's not the magic bullet. Like I said, there's merit to it. There's obviously, it's very useful when it is. If you haven't turned the bigger rocks, you haven't looked into your food, you haven't looked into your recovery, you haven't actually got a training program, you just randomly train, you know, push yourself under fuel, don't really take into consideration actual, like the bigger rocks of recovery, and you think that ice baths are going to help you recover from that, it's just not gonna work, right? Please turn over the bigger rocks of recovery first before going into the smaller rocks, because otherwise you're just majoring in the minors, you know? This is why most people struggle with this still, okay? Even when you know that you need to do all of these things, like even if you were to implement all these things, I've obviously gone through the things that you need to start doing. You're probably thinking, how do I structure my training program then? It's still overwhelming. Still don't have a clear roadmap to follow. Okay, cool, I'm gonna consider these now. Okay, I'm assuming that you actually take these things on board. You're going to start implementing them within your training. How do you do it? This is exactly why I've actually put together the Hybrid Athlete Starter Guide, to help people like yourself actually start training like a hybrid athlete, but in a way that actually allows you to do it for the context of you, right? For your context, not someone else's context that you found on social media that looks super, super cool. I'm a big fan of the cool aesthetics, by the way. So yeah, if you want to be able to start doing those things, obviously as a consequence of you actually making progress and you want to show off your progress, cool, I'm all for that. I love this type of training. It allows you to train more than multiple areas, and I'm just a big fan of it. I'm also, like I said, a big fan of how cool it can look like, right? And if you want to do that, then you need to grab the Hybrid Athlete Starter Guide. It covers everything that we've spoken about. It actually gives you a brief template about training structure, as well as nutrition protocols, as well as recovery protocols. All the big three rocks that I've spoken about within this podcast episode / YouTube episode. Okay? The aim of this guide is to provide you with clarity so you can start learning how to optimally train like a hybrid athlete. So you can optimize your hybrid training in a way that actually doesn't leave you stuck, overwhelmed, fatigued, frustrated, niggly, all of these different things that I mentioned at the start. So make sure to grab that. All you have to do is just click the link in the description down below, and it'll bring you to a page, and then you can download the Hybrid Athlete Starter Guide, and it'll go straight to your email, and you just go through that. I tried to make it in a way where it's not too much, not a massive book, but also I wanted to not just have it as like one page and that's it. I go into each area in enough detail, but still briefly, but enough to give you a good starting point to actually start creating your training program based off of your context, like I said, and actually I also give you guidelines for how to navigate your nutrition regarding how much food that you should consume from a caloric point of view, protein point of view, carbs, as well as fats. So, like I said, that's one of the biggest rocks that we can manipulate in order to optimize our recovery, and then actual recovery guidelines as well to help you on that side of things, so we can keep moving the needle forward, so you can hybrid train in a way that you can actually make progress rather than just trying to throw as much stuff at the wall as possible, because hard work, I get it, hard work's important, but we need to recover equally as hard in order to make real progress. Okay, so make sure to go down to the link below, grab that, and that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. Obviously I'm going to do the usual housekeeping stuff. Make sure to subscribe for more tips on hybrid training, performance, and recovery. Share this video and share this resource. If you do grab it yourself, share it with anyone that you feel might find it helpful too. Leave a question or a comment down below, or just fire me a message on Instagram as well, letting me know your thoughts on this. If you have any questions regarding hybrid training, my DMs are always open. All right? But yeah, make sure to grab the guide down below, and I'll catch you in the next episode.